The power of sharing our fears is not just in the act of speaking them aloud, it's in the shift that happens within us when we allow ourselves to be seen. There's a kind of magic in being vulnerable, in saying, scared, but I am still here, still trying. Still trying. It's that very act of showing up in the midst of fear that creates space for transformation. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we let go of the need for perfection, and we start to embrace the beauty of imperfection. We learn that it's okay to not have all the answers, to not be certain of the outcome. What matters is our willingness to try anyway. And as we share our fears with others, something profound happens. We start to realize that fear is not a solitary experience. It's universal. We all carry fears, and we all face them at some point in our lives. By sharing our fears, we create a community of support and understanding. The shame that often accompanies fear begins to dissolve when we realize that we are not alone in our vulnerability. When we share our fears, we allow others to feel safe in their own vulnerability, and that is where healing begins. It's not in pretending to be fearless, but in acknowledging our fear and moving forward despite it. The stories we tell ourselves are incredibly powerful. They shape our identities, influence our decisions, and govern the way we see the world. Often, these stories are based on past experiences, societal expectations, and the voices of others who may have shaped our sense of self. What's more, many of these stories are not entirely true. They are often exaggerated versions of reality, clouded by shame, self-doubt, and fear. The most dangerous part of these stories is that we start to believe them wholly and completely. We become so wrapped up in these narratives that they dictate our lives, often without us even realizing it. Take, for example, the story we might tell ourselves about our worth. Many of us have internalized messages from our childhood or from our culture that tell us we are only valuable if we are successful, if we fit a certain mold, or if we meet specific standards. Specific standards. These standards might be based on appearance, achievements, or even the way we relate to others. We begin to believe that if we don't meet these external measures of success, then we are unworthy, unlovable, or inadequate. These stories are so deeply ingrained that we carry them into adulthood, often without questioning their validity. They become the lens through which we see ourselves and the world. The problem with these stories is that they are rarely objective. They are distorted reflections of our fears and insecurities, often amplified by our need to protect ourselves from rejection or judgment. For example, we may tell ourselves that we are not good enough for a particular job, or that we will fail if we try something new. These stories often center around failure or fear of not being accepted. But the reality is, we all experience setbacks and imperfections. It's a natural part of the human experience. And yet, when we buy into these self-imposed limitations, we close ourselves off to opportunities for growth, success, and connection. We limit ourselves to the confines of a narrative that doesn't even accurately reflect who we truly are. When we begin to examine these stories and question their validity, we take the first step toward freedom. We realize that the narrative we've been telling ourselves is just that, an old, outdated story that no longer serves us. This is not to say that the past has no value, but it is important to recognize that our past does not define our future. The beauty of being human is that we have the power to rewrite our stories, to reclaim our narrative, and craft a version of ourselves that reflects our true potential, not our fears. We have the ability to take control of the story and redefine who we are on our own terms, regardless of what anyone else might say or think. One of the most powerful ways to shift these self-limiting stories is through vulnerability. When we allow ourselves to share our internal narratives with others, we invite them into our truth. This is where the healing begins. Sharing our stories is not about seeking validation or approval. It's about being seen for who we truly are. When we speak our truth, we open ourselves up to the possibility of connection. Others can relate to our experiences, and in turn, we can relate to theirs. And in turn, we can relate to theirs. The more we share, the more we begin to understand that our stories, while unique, are often not as different from others as we might think. This recognition of common humanity can help dissolve the shame and isolation that these stories create. In sharing our stories, we also begin to see how much power we have over them. We can rewrite the narrative. We can stop identifying ourselves by our failures, our mistakes, or the times we were told we weren't enough. Instead, we can identify ourselves by our resilience, our growth, and our capacity for love. For love. Our stories do not have to be written in stone. They are fluid, they are evolving, and we are the authors. By being vulnerable, by sharing these stories, we take back the pen. We stop letting the story define us, and instead, we define the story. It's through this act of reclaiming our narrative that we find our strength and our sense of purpose. The beauty of rewriting our stories is that it's not just about letting go of negative narratives. It's about embracing the truth of who we are at our core. This truth might not always be what society expects of us, and it might not always fit into the neat boxes we were once told we should fit into. Want to know, but it is our truth, and it is enough. There is immense power in embracing our authenticity, in acknowledging both our strengths and our vulnerabilities. We stop pretending to be something we're not, and instead, we show up as ourselves, imperfect, messy, and wonderfully human. Wonderfully human. It's important to remember that rewriting your story is a process. It's not something that happens overnight. We all have moments when the old narratives resurface, when the voice of self-doubt creeps back in. But it's in these moments that we have the opportunity to choose a different path. Every time we challenge the old story and choose to tell a new one that is more compassionate, more expansive, and more aligned with our true selves, we take another step toward healing. We shift the narrative from one of limitation to one of possibility. And to one of possibility. We choose to live a life defined by our potential, not by the fears and doubts of our past. The need for approval is one of the most insidious forces in our lives, often shaping our actions and decisions without us even realizing it. From a very young age, we are conditioned to seek validation from those around us. We want to be loved, accepted, and seen as valuable, and we often believe that our worth is determined by the opinions and judgments of others. This need for approval can manifest in many ways through the pursuit of external achievements, the desire to fit in, or even the constant comparison to others. We begin to measure our self-worth based on how others see us, and in doing so, we lose sight of who we really are. The problem with seeking approval is that it places our sense of worth in the hands of others. When we live for the approval of others, we become dependent on their validation to feel good about ourselves. And stuff. We seek out compliments, praise, and recognition, often shaping our behaviors and choices to ensure we meet external expectations. This reliance on external validation creates an unstable foundation for our self-worth because others' opinions can change and people's judgments can be unpredictable. When we make our sense of self contingent upon others' approval, we are constantly at the mercy of forces we can't control, which leads to anxiety, insecurity, and a sense of disconnection from our authentic selves. What's even more dangerous is that the need for approval can lead us to suppress parts of ourselves. We may start hiding our true thoughts, feelings, and desires in order to fit into what others expect of us. This often means compromising our values, ignoring our intuition, and denying our authentic selves in the process. Over time, this leads to a sense of internal conflict as the person we present to the world becomes a distorted version of who we really are. We may even convince ourselves that the approval we receive is worth the cost of suppressing our truth, but in doing so, we deny ourselves the deep fulfillment that comes from living in alignment with our core values and desires. There is also a deep fear that comes with not receiving approval. We worry that if we step outside of the norms, take risks, or fail in public, we will lose our connection to others. This fear of rejection or disapproval can paralyze us, keeping us stuck in a cycle of seeking external validation rather than cultivating self-acceptance. We may choose to remain in relationships, jobs, or situations that no longer serve us simply because we fear the consequences of disapproval. The irony is that in our pursuit of approval, we often lose sight of what truly matters to us. We begin to live for others instead of for ourselves. The truth is that we are not meant to live our lives based on the approval of others. True belonging and real connection come when we stop living for someone else's validation and start giving ourselves permission to show up as our true selves. This is not to say that we should completely disregard the feelings or needs of others, but rather that we should not allow their opinions to dictate who we are or what we do. Mm-hmm. When we begin to accept ourselves as we are, flaws, imperfections, and all, we free ourselves from the pressure of needing to be something we're not. We begin to trust that we are worthy, not because of what others think, but because of who we are intrinsically. In the process of releasing our need for approval, we also start to understand the difference between external validation and true self-worth. Self-worth comes from within. It is not dependent on how others perceive us, but on how we perceive ourselves. When we stop seeking approval from the outside world, we create space to reconnect with our inner truth. We realize that our worth is inherent. It cannot be taken away by anyone's opinion, and it cannot be earned by achievements or accolades. We are worthy simply because we exist. Enjo, accolade simply because we exist. And this understanding becomes a powerful foundation for building confidence and self-esteem. Living without the constant need for approval is liberating. It allows us to pursue what truly excites us, to embrace our passions, and to take risks without fear of judgment. It creates space for authenticity to flourish as we begin to live in a way that is aligned with our deepest values. The more we practice letting go of the need for others' approval, the more we become at peace with who we are. The more we become at peace with who we are. We stop measuring our success based on what others think of us and start defining success in terms of personal fulfillment, growth, and contribution. In the absence of external validation, we find that we have everything we need within ourselves to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. What? To live a meaningful and fulfilling life. This shift in perspective also affects the way we relate to others. When we stop seeking approval, we are no longer bound by the need to please or impress some. Instead, we are able to connect with others on a deeper level, not because we are trying to gain their approval, but because we are being our true selves. Sure. This authenticity fosters real, meaningful relationships. Relationships built on mutual respect and understanding, rather than the superficial bond created by shared approval seeking. When we embrace our own worth, we invite others to do the same, creating a ripple effect that encourages those around us to live more authentically as well. Failure is a natural part of life, yet it is often one of the hardest experiences to process and share. Many of us carry the weight of our past failures as if they define who we are. We carry them like a badge of shame, allowing them to dictate how we see ourselves and how we believe others see us, and how we believe others see us. The truth, however, is that failure is not something to be ashamed of. It's a part of the human experience that teaches us invaluable lessons. When we allow ourselves to embrace failure rather than hide from it, we create an opportunity for growth, healing, and a deeper connection with and a deeper connection with others. Failure is not the end of the story. It's often the beginning of something new. For many, the fear of failure can be paralyzing. We fear that if we fail, we will be judged, criticized, or rejected. This fear can keep us from pursuing our goals, taking risks, or trying new things. We may avoid situations where there's even a slight chance of failure, convincing ourselves that it's safer not to try than to face the possibility of falling short. The problem with this is that it robs us of the chance to grow. Growth and progress never come from playing it safe. They come from stepping outside our comfort zone, taking risks, and accepting that failure is a natural part of the process. If we let the fear of failure control us, we miss out on the opportunities that lie just beyond it. The pain of past failure is often compounded by the way we internalize it. We may tell ourselves that we are failures, rather than recognizing that we simply experienced a setback or made a mistake. This shift in perception is critical. The shift in perception is critical. A failure is not a reflection of our worth. It is an event, an experience, and often a stepping stone towards something greater. When we allow failure to define us, we are limiting ourselves to a singular narrative. A narrative that says, I am not good enough, or I will never succeed. But these stories are not true. They are just fragments of a much bigger picture. Every failure is an opportunity to rewrite our story, to change the narrative from one of defeat to one of resilience. One of the most liberating things we can do is to speak about our failures openly. We often think that sharing our mistakes will make us vulnerable to judgment or ridicule, but in reality, it is the sharing of our failures that creates connection. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, when we let others see our struggles and setbacks, we open the door to deeper relationships and authentic communication. Others can relate to our experiences because we are all human. We all fail at some point. All fail at some point. By sharing our failures, we invite others to share theirs, and in doing so, we create a space where shame and isolation are replaced by understanding and support. Vulnerability is where true strength lies. It's the courage to stand up, even after we've fallen. Another important aspect of dealing with the pain of past failures is learning to separate ourselves from the failure itself. It's easy to get caught up in the belief that failure means we are failures, but the two are not the same. A failure is an event or outcome, not an identity. The moment we start to internalize our failures as part of who we are, we limit ourselves and our potential. The key to moving forward is to detach our self-worth from our failures and to see them as experiences that help us learn and grow. Do is and to help us learn and grow. By reframing our failures in this way, we free ourselves from the paralyzing fear of making mistakes and allow ourselves to move forward with confidence and resilience. The reality is that failure is often the greatest teacher we can have. It is through our mistakes that we learn the most about ourselves and the world around us. Failure helps us refine our skills, reassess our goals, and develop a greater understanding of what works and what doesn't. When we can look at failure not as a dead end, but as a learning opportunity, we change the way we approach challenges in the future. Instead of fearing failure, we can embrace it as part of the journey toward mastery and success. Every failure is a lesson that brings us one step closer to where we are meant to be. It's also important to recognize that failure does not define our value or potential. It does not define our value or potential. The people we admire, those who have achieved great success, have all faced failure at some point. They did not let failure stop them. They used it as fuel to keep going. The difference between those who succeed and those who give up is not a lack of failure, but a refusal to let failure define them. Failure is not a reflection of our worth. It's just a part of the process. When we can accept this, we can approach life with a mindset that is not about avoiding failure, but about embracing it, learning from it, and continuing forward with courage and determination. manation, 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 word. 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 Finally, the pain of past failures often stems from the emotional weight we place on them. We may feel embarrassed, ashamed, or even defeated by our failures, but it's important to give ourselves permission to let go of the emotional burden. Holding on to the pain of past failures only holds us back from moving forward. It keeps us trapped in the past, where we are constantly reliving the same mistakes and negative emotions. Healing comes when we let go of that emotional weight, when we allow ourselves to feel the pain, learn from it, and then release it. The more we let go of the past, the more space we create for new opportunities, growth, and transformation. The fear of being seen is one of the most profound and pervasive fears that many of us experience. At its core, this fear is rooted in vulnerability. The idea that if we allow ourselves to be fully visible, others will see our imperfections, our flaws, and our humanity. We may fear that if people truly see us for who we are, they will reject us, judge us, or deem us unworthy of love and connection. But the irony is that this fear of being seen often holds us back from experiencing the very things we crave most: authentic connection, self-acceptance, and true belonging. When we hide parts of ourselves to protect our image, we cut ourselves off from the possibility of being fully understood and deeply loved. For many of us, the fear of being seen is closely tied to our insecurities. We may be afraid that our mistakes, our past, or our vulnerabilities will be exposed to the world, and this exposure will somehow make us less valuable. We build walls around ourselves, creating personas that reflect what we think others expect of us, rather than showing up as our true selves. We begin to wear masks of perfection, success, or happiness, believing that these facades will keep us safe from judgment. But the truth is, these masks only isolate us. They keep others from seeing who we truly are, and in doing so, they prevent us from experiencing the deep connection that comes from being fully seen and understood. The fear of being seen also keeps us from taking risks or stepping into new opportunities. We worry that if we try something new, whether it's a career change, a new relationship, or a creative endeavor, we will be exposed as inadequate or unqualified. We fear the vulnerability that comes with putting ourselves out there, with exposing our true potential and abilities. And abilities. This fear often leads us to stay in our comfort zones, avoiding challenges and opportunities that could help us grow. We believe that by staying hidden, we are protecting ourselves from failure, rejection, and judgment. But in reality, by staying hidden, we are depriving ourselves of the chance to grow, to stretch, and to evolve. One of the most profound aspects of the fear of being seen is the way it manifests in our relationships. We may find ourselves holding back our true thoughts and feelings, afraid that if we reveal too much, we will push others away. We may avoid being fully open with loved ones, even though we long for deeper connection and standing. In romantic relationships, friendships, or even in our professional lives, this fear of vulnerability can prevent us from forming truly authentic bonds. We may settle for surface-level interactions, afraid that letting someone see the real us will lead to rejection or disappointment. But the very thing we are avoiding, authenticity, becomes the key to true intimacy and connection. The more we allow ourselves to be seen, the more we invite others to do the same, creating a space for real, meaningful relationships. When we choose to hide, we also miss out on the opportunity to be fully ourselves in the world. The world needs us, the real us, not the version we think others want to see. Our unique perspectives, experiences, and talents are what make us who we are. When we suppress these parts of ourselves out of fear, we rob the world of what we have to offer. Our authenticity is our gift, and when we hide it, we not only deprive ourselves of fulfillment, but also deny others the chance to connect with us on a deeper level. The fear of being seen keeps us from living our truth and sharing it with the world. But the moment we allow ourselves to be visible, we open the door to a life filled with greater meaning, purpose, and connection. Releasing the fear of being seen is a transformative act. As men thought, it requires a willingness to be vulnerable, to show up as our true selves, with all of our imperfections and flaws. It involves embracing the idea that we are worthy of love and connection, not because we are perfect, but because we are real. But because we are real, the more we allow ourselves to be seen, the more we come to understand that the judgment we fear is often far less harsh than the one we place on ourselves. In reality, most people are not looking at us with critical eyes. They are simply trying to navigate their own lives, just as we are. When we choose to show up as we are, we give others permission to do the same. This vulnerability creates a ripple effect, fostering deeper empathy and connection in the world around us. It's important to recognize that the fear of being seen is not something that can be overcome overnight. It takes practice, courage, and a deep commitment to authenticity. Each time we allow ourselves to be more visible, we take one step closer to embracing our true selves. 2. This process involves letting go of the perfectionism that often drives us to hide, and accepting that we are enough, just as we are. We may stumble along the way, but every time we show up with vulnerability and honesty, we reinforce the belief that we are worthy of being seen. The more we practice vulnerability, the more natural it becomes, and the less power the fear of being seen has over us. Ultimately, the fear of being seen is a fear of rejection and inadequacy, but the truth is that we are never truly rejected when we are authentic. In fact, when we allow ourselves to be fully seen, we attract the people who resonate with our truth, who see us for who we are and accept us with all our imperfections. True connection and belonging come not from hiding behind facades, but from showing up as ourselves. When we choose to be seen, we step into the fullness of who we are, embracing the vulnerability that makes us human and allowing the world to witness our realness in all its beauty. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as a weakness or something to be avoided. In reality, vulnerability is the birthplace of courage, connection, and growth. It is through vulnerability that we open ourselves to the world and allow others to see who we truly are, without the protective barriers we often construct. Yet for many of us, the fear of being vulnerable is one of the greatest obstacles we face. We fear that by showing our true selves, our insecurities, our flaws, and our emotional rawness, we will be rejected or judged. This fear often leads us to hold back, to protect ourselves by keeping our true feelings and thoughts hidden beneath the surface. But in doing so, we deny ourselves the transformative power of vulnerability. The fear of vulnerability often stems from a deep sense of shame. We have been conditioned to believe that in order to be worthy of love and respect, we must be perfect, unflappable, and strong. We are taught to hide our weaknesses, to maintain a facade of control, and to avoid showing any signs of emotional fragility. But this type of perfectionism is an illusion. The reality is that we are all human, and we all experience moments of fear, sadness, or uncertainty. Vulnerability allows us to acknowledge these moments and to share them with others, creating an opportunity for healing and connection. Yet, The fear of being vulnerable often keeps us trapped in a cycle of isolation, preventing us from experiencing the deep connection that comes from embracing our authentic selves. Another aspect of vulnerability that many people fear is the potential for rejection. We worry that if we let our guard down and allow others to see our true selves, they may not accept us or might even turn away from us. This fear is especially pronounced in relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional. We may withhold parts of ourselves, afraid that revealing too much will make us seem weak or unworthy of love. But the truth is, it is through vulnerability that we create the space for real connection. When we allow ourselves to be open and honest with others, we give them the opportunity to connect with us on a deeper level, not because we are perfect, but because we are real. This authenticity fosters trust, understanding, and genuine intimacy. Understand. The fear of being vulnerable also prevents us from pursuing our dreams and taking risks. Vulnerability is an essential component of growth because it requires us to step into the unknown, to take a chance, even when the outcome is uncertain. Whether it's starting a new project, speaking up for ourselves, or taking a leap of faith in our personal or professional lives, vulnerability is the key to progress. However, when we fear vulnerability, we avoid taking these risks. We stay within our comfort zones, choosing safety over the possibility of failure or rejection. This limits our potential and keeps us from experiencing the fullness of life's possibilities. True growth happens when we step into vulnerability, embracing the uncertainty and discomfort that comes with taking chances. Moreover, the fear of vulnerability often leads to perfectionism. We may feel that in order to be accepted or loved, we must present an image of ourselves that is flawless and carefully curated. This perfectionistic mindset can be paralyzing as it keeps us constantly striving for an unattainable ideal. Keeps us constantly striving for an also. We fear that any flaw or imperfection will expose us as unworthy or incapable. Yet, in truth, it is our imperfections that make us human, that make us relatable and real. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give others permission to do the same. We create a space where imperfection is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be celebrated. In this space, we can embrace our true selves, free from the constraints of perfectionism. Vulnerability also plays a significant role in how we view ourselves. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we are giving ourselves permission to experience and express our emotions fully. This act of self-compassion is essential for our mental and well-being. Often, we try to suppress our emotions, particularly those that we perceive as negative, such as sadness, anger, or fear. We fear that expressing these emotions will make us appear weak or out of control. However, when we deny ourselves the freedom to feel and express our emotions, we carry that emotional weight in our bodies, leading to stress, anxiety, and disconnection. Vulnerability allows us to release this burden, to acknowledge our emotions without judgment, and to create space for healing and growth. Finally, Embracing vulnerability requires us to let go of control. We often fear vulnerability because it takes us out of our comfort zones, making us feel exposed and vulnerable to external forces. We fear that if we let go of control, we will be hurt, abandoned, or misunderstood. However, it is only by surrendering the need for control that we can experience true freedom. Vulnerability is an act of courage because it requires us to trust ourselves, trust others, and trust the process of life. When we let go of our need to control every aspect of our lives, we open ourselves to the possibilities of connection, creativity, and growth. Vulnerability, in its truest form, is an invitation to live fully, to be present in the moment, and to embrace the unend with an open heart. Is such and known with an open heart. In the end, vulnerability is not something to be feared, but rather something to be embraced. It is through vulnerability that we find our true strength, the courage to be authentic, and the power to connect with others on a deeper level. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give ourselves permission to live fully, to take risks, and to experience the full range of emotions that make us human. Vulnerability is not about weakness. It's about courage, trust, and the willingness to step into the unknown with an open heart. The more we practice vulnerability, the more we learn that it is not something to hide from, but something to honor. By embracing our vulnerability, we open the door to deeper connection, greater self-compassion, and a life lived authentically and unapologetically.